fellow Falcoholics. Welcome to another episode of the Falcoholic Live. I am your host, Kevin Knight, at Falcoholic Kevin on Twitter, here to bring you another episode in our Free Agency 2021 series, taking a look at some potential free agents for the Falcons to consider going into the 2021 offseason. So if you haven't seen them already, we've already tackled the offensive line, running back, we've tackled some priority re-signings for the Falcons' impending free agents, and also the basics of free agency. So if you don't understand terms like RFA, ERFA, that type of stuff, you can go back and check those out. The links to all of the previous videos in this series will be in the show description. There's also now a 2021 off-season playlist on the channel. So if you are looking to get caught up on all of the off-season content we've already put out, check it out there. Today, as you might have guessed from the title, we're going to be taking a look at tight end. This is not necessarily a position that you might think the Falcons would be particularly likely to spend on, but there are reasons to think that maybe they would. This might be one of the more interesting positions to actually look at on the offensive side of the ball, because if you don't know, new Falcons head coach Arthur Smith loves tight ends, and he loves multiple tight end sets. He used them extensively in Tennessee. He ran 12 personnel, which for reference is 1 running back, 2 tight ends, 3 wide receivers. 2 wide receivers, 5 total skill personnel. He ran that on 35% of plays in 2020, which was the most in the NFL. He also ran 13, which is 1 running back, 3 tight ends, and 1 wide receiver, 9% of plays, which maybe doesn't sound like a lot, but that was 3rd most in the NFL in 2020. So Smith was using multiple tight ends basically at the highest rate in the NFL or close to it. And he also targeted the tight end 29% of the time in his offense in Tennessee. So that was actually 4th in the NFL. So tight ends were a major part of what they were doing in Tennessee, and that could very well carry over to Atlanta. It could change too. You know, we heard Smith talk extensively about how he's going to adapt the offense to the personnel. The Falcons currently only have 1 tight end under contract in Hayden Hurst, who is, I think, a good tight end, someone who has some potential to grow, particularly in a tight end friendly offense. But I wouldn't be shocked to see the tight end emphasized more. Smith used it a lot as a receiver. He used it as a chess piece. He liked to move multiple tight ends around to produce more favorable matchups for the wide receivers. He liked to confuse defenses by splitting a tight end out wide and then lining them up at fullback, and vice versa to get base package defenses on the field. So that is something to potentially look at him doing in Atlanta as well. There's a lot of tight ends out there. This is a pretty good tight end class. I don't think the Falcons are going to be necessarily looking at any of the really top options, except maybe one who you probably can guess and we'll talk about first. But I think they are likely to add at least 1 tight end in free agency, maybe 1 in the draft. They also have Jaden Graham, who's an exclusive rights free agent that they're likely to bring back. So let's go ahead and jump right in. I've got a few tight ends in mind. And also important to note, the Falcons do have a new tight ends coach. That is Justin Peelle, former Falcons player, also tight ends coach from the Eagles for the past 5 seasons. Eagles also one of the teams to use tight ends most frequently in their offense. So you might be noticing a pattern here that tight end might be a bigger deal in Atlanta going forward. But this is about free agent targets for the Falcons. So let's jump right in to some potential targets for Atlanta in 2021 free agency. So, tight end free agents for the Falcons, I've got 4 names in mind to start, and then a couple of guys I'll just briefly touch on. The first one, probably not going to be a shock to you. It is former Titans tight end Jonnu Smith. Smith compiled 41 catches for 448 yards. That's 10.9 yards per catch and 8 touchdowns in 2020, which was a really strong season for him. He also had a very good season in 2019, both seasons notably under Arthur Smith, so he has that strong connection there. Compiled a 75.2 PFF grade in 2020, which is a very good starter. Jonnu Smith's a great receiving tight end. He could easily turn into a tight end 1 caliber player. He could be the future at the position if the Falcons were to decide to let Hayden Hurst walk after the 2021 season. But with Jonnu, you know, the connection is there with Smith. Smith knows how to use him, utilized him well. So that's really the main driving force behind this potential signing. but he'll be expensive. I mean, Jonnu Smith is maybe the second or third best tight end on the market this season. He's probably going to be asking for $9 to $10 million a year. And with the Falcons cap situation, you might be thinking it's impossible. It's not. Look at the Saints. They do these types of things all the time. Falcons have Terry Fontenot from the Saints here, who's familiar with these types of deals. Not saying that this is a good idea, but if Arthur Smith wants to make 2 tight end sets and he wants them to be lethal in Atlanta, adding a high-end receiving option like Jonnu Smith to complement Hayden Hurst, who we already know is a good receiver, it could be possible. So $9 to $10 million a year you're looking at, and it would require basically a multi-year backloaded contract. Like, it would be a lot of signing bonus up front, very minimal salary in year 1, and then it would be backloaded. And basically the team would be banking on essentially the cap going up a lot next year, which is probably going to happen, but, you know, it could get a little bit dicey there. So Jonnu Smith, the top guy I would say that the Falcons might be interested in. They might be able to get him at a bit of a discount because he's had his most success under Arthur Smith. He might want to reunite, so they could get perhaps a small discount there to reunite those two. But otherwise, this is, you know, kind of the high-end option, maybe not particularly likely, but definitely a name to keep an eye on because of that strong connection with Arthur Smith. The second guy is one I think is very intriguing. Didn't really think much of him until I started putting this series together. But that is Richard Rodgers, who was with the Eagles this year. You probably remember Rodgers from Green Bay for some notable catches there. Rodgers has quietly had a very good 2020 season in Philadelphia. So he compiled 24 receptions for 345 yards. That's a very impressive 14.4 yards per reception. That is very good for a tight end. He also added a couple touchdowns. Most notably, he compiled a downright outstanding 88.6 PFF grade, and a lot of that has to do with his blocking, which was excellent this year. So I think Rodgers is clearly a very good tight end 2 option. He's not quite the high-end receiver type. He's certainly capable of being a tight end 1 spot starter, but I think he's more of a complementary piece. But he's an extremely good blocker. Like, I think his blocking has really come on, and he could offer you very high-level blocking there. So he could be a good complement for someone like Hayden Hurst, who's more of a receiver. His blocking is, you know, not great. Hopefully it could get better, but you know, he's not exactly a guy you'd want in line blocking a lot of guys. Richard Rodgers is one of those tight ends you can trust to play, you know, true Y inline blocking. The thing with Rodgers is the Falcons do have the Eagles tight ends coach, Justin Peelle, now on staff. And Rodgers had one of his best seasons now under Peelle. So if Peelle really liked Rodgers, you know, this is a connection that could bring him to Atlanta because Rodgers, like I said, is a free agent. He's also not a big name and didn't really put up eye-popping receiving numbers. I mean, 345 yards is nothing to shake a stick at, but not something that's going to draw the attention of a lot of NFL teams. So he could be available for a mid-range price, you know, $3 million a year, something like that. And I would be very interested at that price. I think Rodgers is a guy that has a lot of potential, is a great complement, someone who can start for you if there is an injury ahead of him, and that blocking is meaningful. So I think Rodgers is definitely one of the names I would keep an eye on for the Falcons in this class. Next, we'll take a look at a familiar name, especially from a few years ago. Folks might remember him having some potential connections to Atlanta. Trey Burton, the versatile Chicago tight end, also previously from the Eagles, by the way, who was basically well known for doing a lot of very interesting stuff. He can play fullback, he can play out wide, he can play inline. Just a very versatile tight end, very athletic. Coming off a couple of down years, so didn't really live up to his contract in Chicago. Went to the Colts and had a solid season, 28 receptions for 250 yards. It's a pretty anemic 8.9 yards per catch, but you know, it is some production there. Added 3 touchdowns as well. Only compiled a pretty average 66.7 PFF grade, so, you know, not very good, but about an average starter. And like I said, his versatility as a blocker is his big thing, and we know Arthur Smith loves to do those sorts of things. He also has that Justin Peelle connection from his time in Philadelphia. As I said, Peelle has been the Eagles tight ends coach for many years, going back to 2015. So Burton was there from 2015 to 2017. So Peelle definitely has experience with Burton. Perhaps he could help him get back on the right track. Burton did have his best years with the Eagles, so that connection could bring him to Atlanta. And since he is coming off those down years, Burton's price should be cheap. I mean, I would say it would be into that $1 to $2 million range. He played on a vet minimum contract this year in Indianapolis. So don't think he'll be prohibitively expensive. I think that's a good buy low candidate who could potentially have a bounce back season with his former tight ends coach that really helped him earn that big contract he initially got from Chicago. So that could be a good reunion opportunity here in Atlanta. Then the last guy that I'm really going to touch on in a big way is one of my draft crushes from, I think it was also 2015, Michael Pruitt, who lit up the combine that year. Didn't really pan out or do a whole lot as a receiver. I think a lot of people really were excited about his athleticism. Didn't really pan out that way. He's bounced around the league quite a bit. He ended up on the Titans for the past several seasons. Still really hasn't made his mark as a receiver. He only had 5 receptions for 49 yards. It's 9.8 yards per reception and a couple TDs this year. But he graded out as a 72.1, which is, a good starter. He is an excellent athlete. He hasn't really become that impact receiver, but he has developed into a strong blocker. This is a guy that isn't necessarily built like a traditional tight end. He's 6'2", 245, so he's got that weight, but he doesn't really have the standout height. But he's a versatile guy. He can move around, and Arthur Smith used him very well, particularly as a blocker in 2020. Like I said, he has that connection. He's been in Tennessee since 2018, and including 2 years with Arthur Smith as offensive coordinator from 2019 to 2020. Pruitt, not a big name, not a guy who's a flashy receiver, so he should also be pretty affordable. And again, this is a player that Arthur Smith has worked with every year as an offensive coordinator. Would not be shocking at all to see him come to Atlanta on that cheap deal to serve as that tight end 2, tight end 3 option, someone who can come in and provide that blocking presence, that versatility that Arthur Smith likes. So 2 more names I'm just going to touch on quickly because I know people will ask about at least the first one. Luke Stalker is one who was a Falcons free agent this year. I did not bring him up in the priority re-signings because I don't view him that way. He hasn't really played particularly well as a blocker or as a receiver. I mean, he's serviceable in both areas, but not really someone I'd make much of an effort to re-sign. But he does have that Arthur Smith connection, right? So he was in Tennessee from 2017 to 2018 when Arthur Smith was the tight ends coach. But notably, Luke Stalker got cut the year Arthur Smith took over as offensive coordinator. So maybe that connection isn't as solid as some might think. Also hasn't played well, as I said, in 2 previous years with the Falcons. So I don't think Stalker is likely to come back. I think they're more likely to go after one of the other tight ends, but it's not impossible. So it is a name to throw out there. Another one is Jeff Swaim, who was also in Tennessee this last year. He was their tight end 3. Didn't really make a mark as a blocker or a receiver. Kind of just a mediocre guy, like an end of the roster type of tight end. He was with Arthur Smith in Tennessee, so I know people might ask about him. He could possibly play tight end 3 for you. Like he could be maybe that reserve guy, but I'd rather have a rookie personally, or just Jaden Graham at an ERFA contract level than signing Swaim. I think both of those options probably offer you more upside and more quality play. So those are the guys that I would say have a slight chance, but I think the original 4 are more likely. So those are the tight end targets for the Falcons in this year's class. Well, guys, there you have it. 4 tight ends in free agency that I think the Falcons are very likely to look into, and a couple other names thrown on top there. I do think that this is a position to monitor. I think Arthur Smith is likely to want to add talent to this group. He's not going to go into the season with just Hayden Hurst, and we don't know how well Hayden Hurst fits with Smith. I don't think he's going to not fit necessarily, but it's definitely a question worth asking if the Falcons are planning to pick up Hurst's option and that sort of thing, because it's a lot of money. So If you enjoyed this video, guys, please do like and subscribe to the channel. We appreciate that. It helps other folks find us on YouTube. We're trying our best to keep this channel ad-free. We hate ads. We know you guys hate watching ads before videos too. No one likes that. So if you're interested in supporting the show, unlocking some exclusive perks and our gratitude, you can check us out on Patreon. That is patreon.com/falcoholiclive. We have several different tiers. None of them are prohibitively expensive, but anything is appreciated, and we do appreciate that support, guys. Also, encourage you to check out our Wednesday night live shows if you want to ask any questions about these videos, anything about free agency or the draft or any of that good stuff. Wednesdays at 8:10 p.m. on our YouTube channel. The whole crew, including myself, Eric Robinson, Evan Birchfield, noted Matt Ryan hater Adnan Ikic, and then we also have some other fun guests like former Falcons guard Keenan Forney that come on from time to time, so check that out as well. Follow the show at Falcoholic Live on Twitter, and you can follow myself, Kevin Knight, at Falcoholic Kevin. And if you aren't already checking out thefalcoholic.com, that is where we post all of our tremendous written content. We've got just a top-notch staff there. We have the best Falcons news coverage, analysis, all that, anywhere on these interwebs. So if you haven't seen that site yet, I don't know how you got here, but you should definitely check it out. That is where we have a lot of very talented people putting out very quality work on a daily basis, even in the midst of the offseason. So check that out, guys. At any rate, thank you so much for tuning in. We do appreciate you guys. We'll be back on Friday with another episode in this series, pivoting perhaps to the defense. So thank you guys once again for tuning in. I'm Kevin Knight. I'll talk to you next time on the Falcoholic Live.